This happened just a few days ago. I had been away in the city for years, and coming back felt like stepping into a time capsule. The air was colder, and the old Victorian houses stood just as I remembered them. I was staying at my childhood home, a creaky old house filled with memories and echoes of laughter, but something felt off, and I couldn't shake it. I tried to enjoy the quiet, but on my second night I heard soft scratching sounds coming from the attic. At first, I didn't think much of it. It could have been a squirrel or just the house settling. The wind howled outside. I wrapped myself in a blanket, trying to ignore it. But as the night wore on, the scratching grew louder. My heart rate picked up. I tried to roll over and sleep, but those sounds just wouldn't stop. I waited for them to disappear, but they only grew stronger. I felt a chill that didn't come from the cold. In the morning, the memories of local legends popped into my head, the ghost stories I used to share with my students. Maybe that's why I felt uneasy, but I brushed it off. The next evening, the scratching turned into whispers. I thought I heard my name mixed with the wind. I didn't know what to think. Was it just my mind playing tricks? Things got worse. I began to see shadows move in the corners of my vision. Each time I turned around, there was nothing there. I felt a weight on my chest. I told myself this couldn't be happening. I wished to be back in my classroom, where stories of the past felt safe. Maybe my return home was a mistake, but I wanted to connect with those old memories. That night, I found odd things in different corners of the house, a child's toy, an old photograph, a rusty key. It felt like someone was watching from the walls. Each night in bed, my heart raced at every creak and groan. Each noise felt deliberate, like it was aware I was there. I wanted to tell someone, but who would believe me? On the fourth night, the whispers got louder. They were right above me in the attic, louder and more desperate. I grabbed a flashlight and went upstairs, my hands shaking. I was terrified of what I might find. The air was thick, almost stifling. Then I saw it. Something darted across the attic. I had to catch my breath. My heart raced. "Who's there?" I called out. I turned to look, and there was nothing again, just the dark, empty corners of the attic. But then I heard it. A voice, clear but chilling, whispered, "Why are you back?" I froze again. I turned, and this time I wasn't alone. There in the dim light I could make out shapes in the shadows, faces I recognized but barely remembered. They stared back at me, their eyes empty. I stumbled back, and dread built inside me, heavier than the coldness in the air. Just then one of them spoke. "It's your turn now." And in that moment I realized I had come home for far more than a holiday. I couldn't breathe. The shadows seemed to shift, their whispering drawing closer. Each face felt oddly familiar, yet no memory surfaced. Panic clawed at my throat, urging me to flee. I took a step back and almost stumbled over an old trunk that had been tucked away in the corner. My instinct screamed to run, but curiosity rooted me in place. I scanned the attic, looking for an escape, but it felt as if the walls were closing in. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "He's back," another figure said, pointing an icy finger toward me. "You have to stay." "Stay?" I was bewildered. "Why? What happened to you?" I didn't expect an answer, yet silence hung heavily in the air. I felt their yearning, a shared loneliness so thick it felt suffocating. Then the tallest shadow stepped forward, its outline sharper than the others. Its voice was a mix of sorrow and urgency. "You're part of us now. You remember the stories, don't you?" I shook my head. "No, I don't. I don't want any part of this." My mind raced with memories of my childhood, the laughter around the dinner table, the fun of hide and seek. How did it lead to this? That's when I realized something was missing. The attic wasn't just filled with old dust and forgotten stories. It held secrets I had buried deep within me. A flash of images hit me like a wave. Children laughing outside, darkened corners of the house echoing tales of sorrow. I felt it again, that weight pressing down on my chest. "Help us!" the tall figure pleaded, its voice softening. "Help us, remember." Before I could respond, my flashlight flickered and went out. Darkness enveloped me entirely. I felt a surge of dread as the whispers grew louder, echoing in my ears. The cold became unbearable. "Help us," they repeated, together this time. I stumbled backward, colliding with the trunk again. My head hit the edge, the thud sending sharp pain through my skull. Dazed, I grabbed onto the trunk for support. My fingers brushed against something rough at the top. It was a latch. I hesitated, the shadows surrounding me swirling, waiting with bated breath. Should I open it? Fear gnawed at me, but I sensed that it held the key to understanding whatever was happening. With a deep breath, I fumbled with the latch, my fingers shaking. Just as I managed to lift the lid, a gust of wind swept through the attic, knocking me off balance. I felt breathless as I was pulled inside an unexpected whirl of memories. And then, everything went dark. I opened my eyes to complete silence. The darkness was thick, almost tangible. I blinked a few times, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I was no longer in the attic, but somehow lying on a cold wooden floor. It felt rough against my skin. As I began to sit up, a faint glow in the distance caught my eye. I turned my head, squinting. The light flickered like a candle, dancing in the dark. It felt inviting, yet ominous. My heart raced. I had to see what it was. I staggered to my feet, my legs shaky beneath me. The air was heavy, saturated with an eerie stillness. I pushed forward. With each step, the flickering light grew stronger, illuminating the outlines of furniture I couldn't recognize. I felt disoriented, as if I were stepping into a dream where nothing made sense. "Hello?" I called out hesitantly, my voice echoing off the walls. No answer came, only the sway of shadows around me, tangled and restless. As I approached the glow, I saw that it came from a table. Atop it sat a single old lantern. Its glass was frosted with age, but the flame within flickered with an otherworldly energy. I felt drawn to it, inexplicably compelled to reach out. My fingers grazed its surface, and I recoiled slightly at the warmth. It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Just then, the whispers returned, swirling around. Louder this time, urgent. "You're too late," they hissed. "You're trapped here now." I froze. The realization hit me like a cold wave. I had stepped into something deeper than I could comprehend. "What do you mean, trapped?" I stammered. "What is this place?" The flame flickered as if responding to my question, casting a glow that revealed more of my surroundings. Framed pictures hung crookedly on the walls, each one a blurry glimpse into past moments. Children playing, couples dancing, faces I should have recognized but didn't. I felt a chill race down my spine. There was a peculiar familiarity to everything, a sense of belonging, yet it sparked panic within me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was part of something dark, something I wasn't ready to face. "Find him!" The voices surged with urgency, echoing in my ears. "You cannot leave until you do." "Who?" I cried. "Who do I need to find?" Just then, the lantern's light dimmed, casting the room into shadow once more. I gulped, looking around frantically. I was alone again. But then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. A figure stepped from the shadows, its form indistinct, cloaked in darkness. My breath caught in my throat as I struggled to discern its features. "Are you here to help me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The figure emerged, revealing a face I never expected to see, a face that made my stomach drop. "I know the stories," it said, its eyes piercing into me, "and it's time you learn the truth." The world around me shifted, concealing and revealing secrets I was afraid to uncover. My pulse quickened. What truth? Then, without warning, the floor began to tremble beneath my feet. I stumbled as the walls seemed to close in. I had to know more, but at what cost? I was no longer sure if I could escape. The ground shook harder, sending me sprawling to my knees. The lantern flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that danced like restless spirits on the walls. Panic coursed through me. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. The figure loomed closer, and I fought to steady my breathing. "Tell me what's happening," I shouted, my voice trembling. The figure didn't respond immediately. It simply stared at me, its expression unreadable. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath fogging in front of me. "You need to listen." The figure finally spoke, its voice low and steady. "This place is a prison built upon memories, glimpses of what was, what could have been. Each face in those photos belongs to someone who lost themselves here." "Lost themselves? How?" I asked, desperate to understand. "What do you know?" "They were drawn in by the warmth of the lantern," it said, gesturing vaguely. "They thought they could find something they lost, but the lantern feeds on their desires, trapping them in their own regrets. You must find the one who causes it all. He holds the key to your escape." "Who is he?" I asked, feeling a chill creep up my spine. "Do you know where he is?" "The lantern will guide you," the figure replied cryptically, stepping back into the shadows. "But beware what you wish for. The truth may shatter you." Then it was gone. I was left alone again, just me and the lantern. The tremors beneath me subsided, replaced by a deep, echoing silence. I pushed myself to stand, my legs still shaky. I could no longer ignore the urgency thrumming within me. I was tangled in a web, and the only way out was to follow the light. I stumbled towards the table, my heart pounding in my chest. The lantern flickered softly, its flame buoying my resolve. I felt a strange sense of determination rising within me. If I was meant to find this mysterious figure, I had to confront whatever lay ahead. As I peered closer into the lantern's glow, I noticed something, a small piece of paper beneath it. Cautiously I pulled it free, the old parchment crumbling at my touch. My eyes widened as I read the scrawled words. "The one in the picture holds the answer." I gazed at the photos lining the walls again, searching for any hint of the key figure. Which one of these blurry faces could provide the answer? Just then, a cold breeze whispered through the room, extinguishing the lantern's light momentarily. I felt a presence nearby, the air thickening with anticipation. I turned quickly, my heart racing. That's when I saw it, a figure standing just beyond the edge of the lantern's reach, watching me from the dark. The resemblance was unmistakable. "Who are you?" I choked out, fear tightening around my throat. But before it could answer, the floor trembled again, and suddenly the light flared back to life. Everything else was cast in shadow. The lantern shrieked as it flickered, but I caught a glimpse of the figure, and my stomach twisted with recognition. I knew that face, and I had buried its memory deep. I staggered back, my pulse pounding in my ears as the realization settled over me like a thick fog. That face, it belonged to someone I thought I'd left behind, someone I had tried desperately to forget. The memories flooded my mind, laughter shared, moments of joy, followed swiftly by pain and betrayal. Before I could drown in them, I forced myself to focus. The lantern was still flickering, seemingly agitated by my emotions. I stepped closer, scanning the remnants of the figure's outline. "What do you want?" I blurted out, hoping the figure would answer this time. "Why are you here?" The shadows shifted, and in a haze of uncertainty, I thought I heard the faintest whisper. "Help me." My breath hitched. I felt an overwhelming mix of fear and pity. Could it really be him? Was he trapped in this place like the others? I had to know. The parchment, the photos, the lantern, they were all tied together in a way I didn't grasp yet. I peered again at the pictures on the wall. Each face stared back with hollow eyes, but one face shone a little brighter, as if seeking my attention. As I approached that specific photo, I could barely believe my eyes. It was me, a version of me from years ago, eyes full of hope and innocence. Next to it was a photo of him, the past mingling with the present in an aching way. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even further, and a gust of wind swept through the room, causing the lantern's flame to flicker dangerously. I instinctively shielded my face, expecting something to leap from the shadows. Instead, the lantern began to hum, a low, resonant sound that filled the space. Before I knew it, a swirling vortex of light erupted from its base, pulling me toward it. A surge of images played out in fragments, days spent laughing under the sun, moments of quiet reflection, and then pain. Words exchanged in heated arguments, the final goodbyes I never wanted to say. "No!" I shouted, trying to resist the pull. "Stop!" But the lantern's light held me captive, and just like that I was spinning through a ribbon of time and emotion. Another figure appeared in the light, taller, shadowed, obscured by the blur of memories. I recognized the stance, the way the person carried themselves. I wanted to cry out, to break free, but I was frozen. In the end, it was never just me, the figure's voice echoed. You were part of this too. The lantern blazed brighter, and everything around me blurred once more. I felt the weight of truth bearing down on me, threatening to crush me under its intensity. Then, just like that, I was back in the room, the lantern steady again, but I wasn't alone anymore. The figure from the past stood in front of me, clear now, and I was faced with a choice. I could delve deeper, uncovering the secrets that had bound us, or I could turn away, leaving the truth buried once again. But the twisted knot in my chest said I had to confront it. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding like a drum. "We need to talk," I said, meeting those familiar eyes. And just like that, the shadows shifted once more. The air crackled between us, thick with unresolved tension. I searched his familiar face for answers, for some clue about why he was here, but all I found were memories I never wanted to revisit. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Instead, a heavy silence draped over us, broken only by the soft crackle of the lantern. My heart raced. This was my chance to confront the past, to ask the questions I had buried deep inside. "Why are you here?" I repeated, forcing the words out. "What do you need from me?" His eyes flickered, weighing my question. Just when I thought he would answer, the shadows around us deepened. It felt as if the room itself was tightening, suffocating any hope of clarity. "Please," he said, but it was barely above a whisper. "You have to remember." A rush of frustration welled up in me. Remember what? All I have are fragments, muddled pieces. I don't understand. He stepped closer, and in that moment, something shifted in his expression. "You have to see it for yourself. You can't remember unless you let go of the fear." I hesitated. The darkness felt alive, humming at the edges of my vision. But I needed to know the truth. I had to push through the fear. "What do I need to do?" He reached out, and a pulse of energy surged through the air. "The lantern. It will show you." Before I could protest, he took my hand and pulled me toward it. The flame danced wildly, casting long shadows around us. I felt an urge to pull away, but I held my ground. One deep breath. Then I stared into the light, focusing on my reflection mixed with the colors swirling inside. Images began to materialize, hazy yet vivid. I was back outside, standing on the playground where we used to play. Laughter rang in the air. I saw him, smiling, carefree. Moments of joy rushed in, infusing me with warmth. But they quickly dissolved into stark images of pain and arguments, doors slamming, words spat like poison. My chest tightened. I squeezed my eyes shut. "No, I don't want to see this." But the vision remained, relentless. I was a part of those moments too. The betrayal felt fresh, as if it had happened yesterday. "Look deeper," his voice urged, sounding closer but still distant. "It's there. You have to find it." With willpower I didn't know I had, I forced my eyes open. The chill in the air wrapped around me tighter, but I pressed on. Suddenly, I felt an intense connection, not just to him, but to that version of myself, full of innocence, still believing in the possibility of trust. That's when I saw it, an image floating within the chaos. A single moment when everything had shattered, the confrontation that had changed our lives forever. My breath caught in my throat as understanding crashed over me. I turned to him, my voice shaking. Was it really my fault? Before he could respond, the lantern flickered wildly, and the shadows began to swirl again, sucking me back into the light. Then everything went dark. I woke up gasping, the remnants of the vision still dancing behind my eyelids. The room was dark, the only evidence of the lantern's light lingering in the corners of my mind. Panic surged through me as I sat up, trying to shake off the heaviness. What had just happened? The shadows in the room felt thicker now, wrapping around me like a spider's web. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my heart hammering in a frantic rhythm. I needed to know what I had seen and what it meant, but the fragments of that moment eluded me, slipping right through my fingers. I stumbled toward the window, pulling back the curtains. Moonlight flooded in, illuminating the room and pushing back the darkness that felt so alive, so suffocating. Outside, the street lay empty, bathed in silver. I glanced down, searching for any sign of him, but there was nothing, not even the echo of his voice. "What did you want me to remember?" I whispered into the stillness. I paced the cold wooden floor. Uncertainty nagged at me. I needed answers. Memories stirred inside me, the images I had seen flickering like a fading film reel. But instead of clarity, I felt muddled. Regret and fear twisted together like a coiled snake. I decided to get out of the house. Maybe a walk would help soothe my racing mind. I pulled on my jacket and slipped out the door, the crisp winter air biting against my cheeks. The town felt eerily quiet, the only sound being the crunch of snow beneath my boots. As I walked, flashes of that day on the playground haunted me. The laughter turned bitter, the hurtful words exchanged. Something kept drawing me back, weaving through my thoughts like an angry gust of wind. The more I tried to push it away, the more insistent it became. I found myself at the playground, the swings swaying gently in the faint breeze. I stood frozen for a moment, the memories flooding back. That's when I saw it, something unusual in the snow. Curious, I moved closer, heart thudding with every step. There, half buried in the white, was an old pendant. It glimmered faintly as I grasped it through icy fingers. My breath caught. I recognized it. It had belonged to him. A memory rushed in like wildfire, igniting my senses. But before I could process it, a figure emerged from the shadows behind the trees. My heart stuttered. I squinted into the darkness, feeling the air grow heavy once more. The figure stepped forward, and the moonlight caught a familiar face. "Why did you follow me?" I demanded, a knot of apprehension curling in my stomach. "I didn't have a choice," they replied, voice low. "You're in danger." Suddenly the ground beneath me felt unstable as I glanced back at the pendant. Questions surged, colliding in chaos. I thought I would uncover my past, but now I was faced with a threat that felt very real. "Who are you?" I asked, though I feared the answer might shatter whatever clarity I had left. The figure took a step closer, eyes piercing into mine. "You need to trust me. There are things you still don't know." A chill ran down my spine. I felt the night closing in around me, the shadows stirring with intent. I wanted to flee, but my feet were rooted to the spot. The only thing I could think was that this was just the beginning. The air between us crackled with tension. I wasn't ready for answers, but it seemed I had no choice. "What do you mean?" My voice wavered as uncertainty wrapped around me like fog. The figure stepped closer, revealing a face twisted with concern. "They're looking for you. They know you're here." "Who? Who is looking for me?" I felt my pulse speed up. This wasn't a game anymore. My instincts told me to run, but something held me there. Fear and curiosity keeping me anchored. "They want the pendant," the figure said, glancing over their shoulder. "The memories it holds. You don't understand what's at stake." I held the pendant tightly in my hand, feeling its weight as if it were a stone. I don't even know what this means. That much was true. My history was a puzzle, and each piece felt more dangerous than the last. "Let me explain," they began, but the moment was interrupted by a rustle in the trees. My heart dropped as shadows danced ominously in the moonlight. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught my eye. My instincts kicked in, and I took a step back, but I was still rooted in place. "What was that?" I stammered, breath hitching. "Stay close to me," the figure urged, eyes darting. I felt a rush of adrenaline, panic blooming anew in my chest. The shadows morphed into an undefined shape, rising like a dark cloud. My gaze flicked between the figure and the oncoming darkness. "What should I do?" "Trust me. We have to go now." They reached for my arm. I hesitated, fear battling confusion. Just as I made my decision, another figure broke through the trees, this one shadowy but much larger, looming over us. It moved with determination, a predator on the hunt. "Run!" the figure shouted, shoving me forward. I stumbled, breaking free from the paralysis that had gripped me. I sprinted across the playground, the crunching snow beneath my feet a stark reminder of the urgency pressing in from all sides. We darted toward the path leading away from the playground, the shadows chasing close behind. Fear clawed at my throat, making it hard to breathe as we weaved through the trees. I could feel the pendant bouncing against my chest, a heavy reminder of the danger lurking just behind us. "Where are we going?" I gasped, struggling to keep pace with my guide. "To a safe place," they replied, glancing back. Their voice was laced with dread. "We need to hide until it's clear." We pushed deeper into the woods, branches scratching at my arms and face. My heart raced, every instinct screaming at me to escape. But a part of me clung to the hope that maybe I would finally get answers. After what felt like an eternity, we stumbled into a clearing. The figure pressed me behind a thick tree. "Stay here," they said urgently, scanning our surroundings. "What is happening? Who are they?" The questions tumbled out of me, frantic and desperate. "I'll explain later." They kept their eyes on the shadows that seemed to stretch farther, merging into one ominous entity. "Just know that you have to be careful. They cannot find you with that pendant." Then a cold chill settled in the air, and everything went silent. My breath caught in my throat. Something was out there, and it was hunting for more than just memories. Every heartbeat thundered in my ears as I hid behind the tree, eyes glued to the clearing ahead. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but it felt like a stone. My guide was tense, every muscle in their body coiled tight like a spring ready to snap. The silence stretched, and for a moment I thought maybe we had escaped. Then a low growl echoed through the woods, slicing through the stillness. It wasn't an animal sound. It was something darker, more sinister. My heart raced again, each beat hammering in my chest. "Stay down," my companion whispered, their voice barely audible. They crouched lower, craning their neck to peer into the shadows. I focused, straining to hear anything beyond the growl. My mind spiraled with possibilities. Who were these hunters? What did the pendant really mean? I needed answers, but I couldn't shake the fear that any question would draw us closer to danger. Then I saw them. Figures emerged from the darkness. 2, maybe 3. They moved with unnatural grace, their silhouettes flickering like flames. I couldn't see their faces, but I felt their energy, an unsettling vibration that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "They're close," my guide said, the urgency in their voice rising. "We need to move." "Where?" I whispered, panic creeping back in. "Follow me!" Without waiting for a response, they dashed deeper into the thicket and instinct kicked in. I hurried after them, branches tearing at my clothes as if they wanted to keep me from escaping. The growls faded, but I didn't feel any safer. The woods were alive, each crackle and rustle amplifying my fear. There was no safe place here, not when those shadows could be lurking behind every tree. We rounded a bend and suddenly stumbled onto the edge of a cliff. The ground dropped away steeply, revealing a rocky ravine below. My mind raced. There was nowhere to go but down. "There!" My guide pointed to a narrow path hugging the cliffside, barely visible through the growing twilight. "We can use that to move along." I hesitated, looking at the dark chasm beneath us. "What if I slip?" They grabbed my arm, pulling me closer. "You have to trust me. It's our only chance." Taking a deep breath, I nodded. We stepped onto the precarious pathway, the rocks crumbling beneath our feet. I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, my heart racing as I fought the urge to look back. Then everything changed. A loud crack echoed off the cliff as a branch above us snapped. I barely had time to react when it plunged down, striking my guide in the shoulder. They let out a cry, stumbling sideways. "No!" I gasped, reaching out. They regained their footing just in time, but the moment of distraction had cost us precious seconds. The growl returned, sharper now, like nails on a chalkboard. Shadows began swarming around us, and adrenaline surged through me like wildfire. That's when I saw it, a glimpse of light reflecting off something metallic in the bushes nearby. It could be a way out, or it could be another trap. "Look!" I shouted, pointing. "Over there!" They hesitated, uncertainty flashing in their eyes, but there was no time to waste. "Go!" I urged, urgency flooding my voice. As we changed course, the growls intensified, the shadows closing in. I felt the pendant's weight pulling at me. Whatever was pursuing us was relentless, and it wouldn't stop until it had what it wanted. We made our way through the brush, the branches scratching at my arms, and I could hear the growls growing more defined behind us. My heart raced as I pushed through the panic, adrenaline surging with every frantic step. The light glimmered again in the shadows, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. "There!" I shouted again as we veered toward the source, thorns and brambles pulling at my clothes like the regrets of my past. My guide stumbled behind me, and I didn't have a moment to look back. I only focused on that light, desperately willing it to lead us to safety. Finally, we burst through the dense foliage and emerged at the edge of a clearing. In the center stood an old, abandoned shed. The door hung off its hinges, and its wooden walls were weathered and crumbling. But there was something alluring about it. The flicker of light danced through the cracks, inviting us in. "Quick!" my guide urged, lunging toward the shed. I followed closely behind, every muscle in my body screaming to run faster. As we crossed the threshold, I could feel the presence of shadows shift outside. They were closing in. We stumbled inside, hearts racing and breathless. My guide swung the door shut just in time, and the clattering echoed in the quiet space. The interior was dark, and the flickering light emanated from a single lantern placed on an old workbench. It was a familiar glow, one that reminded me of the lantern that had driven me into this chaos in the first place. "Are we safe?" I managed between breaths, my heart still pounding in my chest. "For now," my guide said, glancing out through a gap in the boards. "But we won't be for long. We have to figure out what to do next." I looked around, taking in the dusty remnants of the shed. Tools and scraps littered the floor, and photographs lined the walls, faded glimpses of past lives and forgotten memories. I felt a surge of recognition, a connection to the people in the photographs that was both unsettling and familiar. But then the scratches on the door began, slow at first, but building in intensity. A shiver ran down my spine, dread pooling in my chest. "What are they?" I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "The shadows. They want what you have," my guide replied, glancing at the pendant clenched tightly in my fist. "What you remember, they want to trap you in your own regrets." I gulped, realization creeping in. "But if I give it to them, what happens?" "They'll keep you here," they said flatly. "You'll be just like me, like the others." Panic welled up as I processed this. We can't let that happen. I looked towards the lantern. "But if it brought you here, maybe it can help us." Without thinking, I stepped closer to the flickering light, my instinct urging me forward. "What are you doing?" my guide asked, worry lining their voice. "I need to see if the lantern holds a way out," I responded, closing my eyes and reaching for its warmth. I could feel the energy radiating from it, that strange force which connected us all to our past. As I held onto the lantern, I thought of the photographs and the people who once lingered in my life. "Show me," I whispered. The light flared, illuminating the shed more brightly, shadows stretching and warping around me. The air thickened, and suddenly I was surrounded by a swirl of images, faces, places, moments that had felt lost but were now roaring back to life. I saw my childhood home, the laughter of friends, the moments of joy, and then the heart-wrenching argument that had torn everything apart. "No!" I cried out, the memories filling me with weight. "Please, not this." But the lantern pulsed brighter, and the swirling colors intensified. It was overwhelming. I felt myself being drawn into those moments again, like ink spreading through water. I gasped as a figure emerged again, the familiar face standing amidst the swirling chaos. "You must confront this," he said gently. "Only then can you break free." "No, I can't," I protested, fear clawing at my throat. The shadows were gathering outside again, their whispers growing more frenzied. "Facing it is the only way forward," he urged, the intensity in his gaze unyielding. Something deep inside me began to crack, a realization flooding over me. I had been so afraid of reliving the moments that had caused me pain, but maybe it was what I needed to finally let go. "I'll face it," I affirmed, my voice steadying, "but I won't do it alone." I turned to my guide, fierce determination sparking in my chest. "We'll do it together." "Together," they echoed, eyes wide with understanding. We reached for each other's hands, strength flowing between us, as if the lantern had catalyzed some ancient bond. I felt the warmth radiating in our clasp, infusing courage into the heart of our fear. As we summoned the strength we needed, the lantern compacted its light, enveloping us in a dome of radiance, a stark contrast against the encroaching darkness outside. "Now!" I cried. In that moment, the shadows crashed against the door, and we could hear their suffocating whispers trying to worm their way inside. But we held on to each other more tightly. Together, we turned toward the light. The lantern surged, illuminating our surroundings. The floor beneath us shimmered, the spectral images swirling around began to dissolve. The weight of regret lifted as the radiant energy swelled, drowning out the malevolence outside. In a final burst of light, the shadowy figures screeched, their forms dissipating in the brilliance we unleashed. The lantern flickered, swirling to a steadiness, and then all was quiet. When I finally opened my eyes, I found myself back in the shed, the door standing resolutely closed, but the shadows dissipating, retreating into the night. I turned to my guide, breathless but alive with newfound clarity. That was it. We faced it. Together. They nodded, a look of disbelief mixed with relief washing over their face. "I never thought we could do that," they breathed, glancing around the shed, which suddenly felt more like a sanctuary. "We did," I replied, smiling through the tears. "And now, we need to choose what happens next." The memories still lingered, but they didn't control me anymore. The shadows may always hover at the edge of our reality, but we had found a way to peace, however small. Hand in hand, we stepped into the open night, uncertainty still looming ahead, questions lingering in the air, but there were new paths to tread. As we walked away from the shed, I glanced back, a small smile crossing my face. Maybe some stories would remain unwritten, but we had woven new threads into the fabric of our future. And though the past would always echo around us, we were no longer bound by it.